I woke up this morning thinking about the race problem that we've always had in our country. And as I came of age and came to understand what it all meant and how it affected me, I wasn't ever sure what I should have been doing. And quite honestly, I kind of ignored it quite a bit all the way through high school till I got to college and I went to a predominantly white institution and I had no choice but to face it. But still, I hung out with people who looked like me, talk like me, act like me, dance like me, and went on through that experience, knowing, hearing stories about how different professors would say things to black students, but just still and arguing and talking about, fighting the power and those kinds of things. Even had songs about that, but just kind of got through it. And now I'm much, much older and have kids of my own who are in their 30s, and we're still having the same conversations that I used to have with my colleagues, my friends back at the university in the 70s, mid 70s. As I pay attention to the riots and all the injustice that's happening around Black lives and counter everybody lives kinds of things that people say, I knew there was something that I needed to do, but I wasn't quite sure what that was. uh, I haven't been a in the street kind of activist. I've taught this kind of activism in the courses that I've taught as a graduate professor, but just never, besides voting, did anything that I would consider, well, teaching and voting, anything that I would consider just really fighting the power. I'm a family therapist by trade, and I am a postmodern family therapist to be specific. And while we talk about problems, we always reframe and talk about problems in a way that acknowledges that there is a problem, because that's why people are there seeing us, but also framing it in a way so that it makes it easy for our clients to talk about their problem. And I've used the metaphor, if America was my client, what kind of conversation that would be. And I woke up this morning knowing that there was something more I could do. And as my day went on, pulling weeds and running errands, I realized I thought about writing a letter, and specifically to a group of Americans that I think are very much a part of the problem in our country. Now that was always difficult for me to say, because one thing I did not want to do is throw jabs and have people concerned and cutting this off and not listening to it and getting to the point. But I think in the back of my mind I always knew that, Deborah, you're going to have to call it what it is. You're going to have to say what it is so you can begin to talk about it, which is the problem. Now, that's good if I'm one-on-one and one-on-two when I'm talking to a couple. But when we're faced with the kinds of problems that we're faced with now, you got to call it what it is, because everybody's saying, and I know very well, that's our problem. We're not calling a spade a spade. We're not calling a heart a heart, a diamond a diamond. We're not being specific and outright just acknowledging what's happening. Now, all of that said, I'm good at preambles. All of that said, I decided that I would write my letter to the white church. Yes. And then I thought about the black church. But I'm starting with the white church. And the reason why I'm starting with the white church is because white populace here in our country is ignoring race in a way that makes it difficult for us to move beyond that. And I'm going to always go back to a therapeutic metaphor, because when I'm seeing clients, if the client can't say what the problem is, then we don't have anywhere to go. We need to know what's wrong, and we need to know what we want to do to fix it. So we need to know that racism has always been a problem ever since they created race. And the only way we're going to fix it, if you were my client, is to talk about it. Now, with that said, I came to the conclusion, because I have been a believer since I was about 11, a Christian since I was 11, but not the kind of Christian that just believed everything they told me. And even though I know some of y'all think, the ones that know me, that I was on the borderline holy roller, but I never just took stuff without questioning, and I didn't embrace things unless I truly believed them. And so I'm here as a believer, as an American, to invite my white brothers and sisters, the leaders in the churches, the leaders in the communities that call themselves by the name of Christ, that call themselves believers, Christians, whatever your language is for it, whatever your denomination is, you say that you believe in a God and that has redemptive plans for us. And so how then do we redeem ourselves? How then do we use what the Spirit of God, we talk about the Spirit is living inside of us. How do we then acknowledge that the Spirit of God has some right and some wrong things? We know there's some blurred, we have some doctrinal differences, but there are a few things, and only a few, that we all agree on. And the one thing that those of us who call ourselves Christians believe in, and that is the Christ, the anointed one, Jesus of Nazareth. We believe in that person. We believe, if you don't espouse that traditional way of seeing him as a savior and redemption and resurrection and all that, you believe that the things that he stood for, the ideals that he taught, you believe those things to be true, whether you accept him or not. And so, with that in mind, I think of this story. I love telling this story about a 4-year-old little boy came to church one day with his grandparents, and he didn't go to church very often. But when he walked into the church, the person who usually sits in the seat where the pastor sits was not sitting there, and he said, "Where's God?" And of course, in his little 4-year-old mind, the person who sits there that everybody looks up to, everybody is waiting on to speak, everybody says amen and bows and shakes his hand and hugs him when he at the end of he had to be God because he got that kind of attention. Now, if I were a 4-year-old and I came to this country and I read the different declarations and the anthem and all the God talk, I would ask the same question: where's God? And so I'm asking you, believers, American believers, white American believers, where is God? I can't help but know that God in you is grieved. The God in you you have to be squashing the God in you to not have concern, let's say, anger, righteous indignation about your country, our country. I can't, I refuse to believe, if you believe any of the things that you profess to believe based on the Bible, if you believe any of it, and I say any of it because there's redemption in the Old Testament, so we don't have to start splitting hairs about the doctrines. We can talk about what the theme is throughout the Bible, and it's forgiveness. It's forgiveness, it's love, it's redemption. How do we bring those beliefs, those ideas to our lived experiences? How we treat each other, how we think about people of color, all of them. And of course, how we think about each other. But that is not the issue, and which is why we always have to throw something in there like that, because everybody want to say it. Everybody's lives matter. The problem here, let's say if this were a family, America is a family, and we came to therapy as a family. There would be somebody in the family, and that would be the black child, who would say, "This is how I've been treated ever since I got here. This is what I have to teach my children. This is what I can expect when I walk out of my door. This is the way it is." And I've been telling you guys, everybody else in the family, I've been telling you all along how it is, and you just say they're there, or it's not as bad, or just comb, straighten your hair, and put on a suit and a tie, and use good grammar, and everything will be all right. Well, I know that's not what's happening, and I continue to act out in different ways, sometimes peaceably and sometimes not so peaceably. I act out to bring the attention to the family about what is my experience, and you keep saying, "Oh, it's not that bad." Now, As a child, as a member of this family, I have no other choice but to believe that my family just does not care about me. That no matter what I say, they ignore it. No matter what I say, they continue to mistreat me and allow other people to mistreat me and teach other people these awful things about me that I have to figure out how I'm going to navigate my life around that. That's the nature of this family. And add to all of that, my family is a Christian family. So my dad is a pastor and my mother is a pastor's wife. And all my siblings are Christians too. Singing in the choir, have missionary trips, just all kinds of great stuff we've been doing. But you treat me like I am not the son of the same or daughter of the same God. You treat me like I am not a member of the family of God. What am I to conclude? Now, I could conclude, like some people do, that you don't even believe what you say you believe, that you've been lying about that too. And if I would take that approach, then I would say, then it makes sense that you continue to lie about my experience in our family. So you have all these lies that you have to stick with in order for your life to make sense. That's one approach. My other approach is you just selfish and greedy and you don't want to share the world with me. Some people say you're afraid. I used to say that is not hate, it's fear. White people don't hate black people, they're afraid of them. Then I started to think, well, who treats people this way? Who treats people this way? And then I said, where are the believers in all of this? It's hundreds of thousands of us. Where are they? Why aren't they outraged? Why aren't they carrying crosses through the streets? Why aren't they standing up? And then I realized it's just very comfortable. And that's a different cultural thing. But I'm a family member. Okay. Now I got to think about the fact that you've been taught that I'm really not human. So that makes sense to me. But then I go back to the cross. I go back to the Christ thing. And then I wonder, where are you? What have you been teaching your people, pastors, all these hundreds of years about their brother and sister who's black? And I'm talking black. What have you been teaching them? Is there something different in y'all's Bible that y'all hanging on to, like the slave obeying the masters? I don't know. I do know you've been, a lot of you've been in seminary and you know hermeneutics and you know eschatology. I know you, so you know about the end times. You know about how to rightly divide the word. Again, like I said, no matter what your denomination is, no matter what your perspective, there are things that we all agree on. And love is the whole reason of the cross, the sacrifice. But I, as a believer, had to call you out on this misbehavior, on your lack of, love. On your willingness to allow this war, this greed, this privilege of what you have inherited to continue to not just divide a nation and to kill off a people continuously, but to just be just totally oblivious. I know, you know what? I know you're not oblivious. You cannot be. Now I'm going to assume that you are who you say you are, that you really are a believer, that you do believe in the resurrection, death, the burial, the resurrection, the grace of God. I'm going to take that road now. And if that is the case, I liken you onto an individual Christian who knows that they are wrong, but they won't acknowledge it. That they are allowing themselves to be sick and stressed. Anything but acknowledge your wrongdoing. Go to your neighbor and go to your God and say, against thee and thee alone have I done this thing. That kind of acknowledgement, per David, led to punishment, but it led to redemption. That is the only way. My white Christian brothers and sisters, that's the only way. You, and I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to some general, I'm talking to the white Christian, primarily to the pastors, but then not just to the pastors, because I'm not a pastor. And my pastor just can't lead me anywhere. I'm just sorry. Smart, seminary trained, but I did not agree with every single thing because I checked it out for myself. And even if I didn't check it out, the Spirit of God lives in me. Got just the same access. I have the same access that he has. So I really cannot even blame your pastor, which blame is not what I do, but I did point the finger because it starts at the top. So if you were the father, let's say, of this American family, you have failed us and you continue to fail us. You fail in your God, quite honestly. And if you look at the stats, people don't go to church like they used to. They don't believe like they used to. They don't respect us, and I say us, like they used to, because we don't know how to love. And I say we. But I have the gift of, I'm a teacher. We know that God is no respecter of person. Now that we know, well, at least I know it. I'm gonna have to make that division because I'm telling y'all, I'm just, if I were a white Christian, I would be just as disappointed as I am as an American. If you really are who you say you are, if you really believe what you say you believe, then you will reach out to me and together we'll figure out how we can, as Christians in this nation, as Christians, how we can do this. And that's if you believe what you say you believe. And I'm going to keep saying that because I'm having a hard time believing that hundreds and thousands of white Christians are not doing something different than what you're doing. And I'm offering you an opportunity. I am totally open to working with you on this. This is my contribution. This is my contribution to what is happening in our nation. I am talking to believers. Stay tuned, Black Christians, because I got a word for you as well. howtolove.us is my website. My email address is drdeborah@howtolove.us. Reach out to me if you're interested in helping to fix this. And if you got something, as my grandmother would say, something ugly to say to me, then go ahead and say it. That's the chance we revolutionaries take, a la your Christ. Let's do it together.